Thank you very much for coming. And as you know, the Think Big is not necessarily missing ideas, but if you have new ideas, please share them with staff so we can continue the discussion. And looking forward, what else we can do in the future. And just keep in mind, this is not funding with MDX toll dollars. This is funding with new source of funding, okay? So this is not, it's not that we have the money to do this. It's that we will look for new ways and new creative ways of funding these initiatives, starting with the MIC. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order and turn it over to Maria Luisa so she could do roll call for us a minute.
Mr. Cancio?
Present.
Mr. Gonzalez? Mr. Holland? Mr. Martinez? Mr. Meyer? Ms. Fano? Mr. Vasquez? Mr. Walters? Ms. Weinberg? Secretary Pago? Treasurer Rodriguez Pina? Vice Chair Ferrer? Chair Gutierrez.
Here.
I think
Maria
Mr.
Luisa, I don't know if you guys heard, but I am on the
Mr.
phone.
Vasquez is on the line.
Excellent.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And with that, Council.
Does anybody have any, excuse me, does anybody have any conflicts that they want to report?
No,
Seeing
just
no
the
one
fact that
before.
there's still a lot of traffic and school is out and there's still traffic.
Yes.
So what happened? What's going on? Why are there so many cars?
People like to drive.
People like to drive. We live in a big city and everybody wants to enjoy the sun and fun, and there's more cars. No one wants to leave their car at home or not. Very good. No complaints. With that, we open the public comment portion of the meeting. If there's anyone, any members of the public that would like to step forward and say something to us, please do so now. Hearing and seeing no one, now the public comment portion is closed, and we move forward with the discussion item at hand. And Toledo, you know you're on.
There you go. Good morning, board members. So we're going to continue where we left off last week and talk about the ideas that we've been discussing in-house. And again, just as a reminder, the purpose of this meeting is to identify opportunities that expand on the purpose of MDX or the mission of the agency. And it's really to see where we can, where can we take the agency. And all the ideas encompass different facets. So from finance, which we discussed last week, through capital projects to even customer service and technology. So we're trying to incorporate everything that we can into these ideas. So with that, I want to start off with some customer experience ideas that we came up with. And so the first one is with our toll-by-plate online payment. We wanted to add a live, we talked about adding a live chat component similar to when you go to pay your bills, your phone bills or your Comcast bills or any type of anything like that. You have the ability to have a live chat with a representative online, which would help you assist you online while you're doing your payment instead of having to make a phone call and multitask with two different mediums. This is an opportunity where if you have any questions with your bill, if you have any questions on what you need to do while you're online, the live chat component will help you do that. And then we would also include in that the part of the process would be including a myth versus realities insert into the toll-by-plate invoice, which also helps us get the facts out there. You know, we hear a lot of things on the news about MDX that aren't factual. This is an opportunity for us to add components or add messages to our customers about who MDX really is and state facts. And if we have any questions on that, I can have Steve is here and he will assist in answering any of these questions. Another idea that we came up with is a customer sound off. And really what this is about giving our customers a voice. You know, we hear from the media what our customers are saying, but it's the media taking a large consensus and saying and really delivering a message that's pro-media. What we want to do is that we want to have a conversation with our customer directly. So the idea is to provide information kiosks in areas around the county. We thought about using retrofitting the existing toll booths that we've taken out of the plazas, kind of, be able to wrap them with messages from MDX, provide facts about our projects, facts about MDX, put questions, guidance questions of things that they might want to ask, and then what we do is we provide an electronic component where there'll be like a 3 to 5 minute recording where they'll ask us the questions, and then when we get those questions, we'll post the responses online and we'll guide them to hear those responses online. And I'm going to just share with you this little quick video of an example of how this could work.
Microsoft loves to hear from its customers and partners.
How do you?
And the Speak Your Mind booth is an opportunity to do just that. You walk up to this video booth. It's kind of like an ATM machine. It has a touch screen experience. You press a button when you're ready to talk. You speak. Press the red button when you're done, and you go on. It's very simple. And frankly, whatever you want to tell us, we'd love to listen to that.
So the idea is like that. People will walk up to these booths. They'll ask us questions. They'll tell us they'll ask us what they want to know about MDX. We'll guide them. At the end of the message, we'll tell them to go to the website, and we'll post the responses, and we can have that interaction with our customers. And we feel that this is a way that we can have a one-to-one conversation instead of having the media or the majority speak for a lot of people. We can have individual conversations with our customers.
Just a point of clarification. You're saying we. Does that mean that it's going to be manned by an individual, or is it the complete use of technology?
This will be with complete use of technology, using either touch screens or a sound booth. They'll press a button to record, and then they'll get a message back, a recording back, or through the touch screen they'll get instructions on how to complete their messaging to MDX. And again, we would wrap these booths with MDX information so we can provide them project information on what we're doing, how where we're performing our work, what are the advantages of what we're doing with the project. So it's a two-way communication with our customers.
Can that not just be done through the website now versus funding the kiosk?
We do it now through the website, but we don't have the interaction through the website. They just go, they see what they want to do, and then they go. This is an opportunity for them to actually voice their questions with MDX, their concerns, anything that they want to tell us. And we realize that, we're going to get a handful or more than a handful of people that are just going to vent. But you will get people that are going to give you or ask you legitimate questions about the authority or about our projects, or they're, people that really want to know what's happening with MDX, what's happening with their toll dollars, and we believe that this is an opportunity that we can implement at hopefully a relatively low cost. Look at public areas. We did receive comments where we do need to go to where the public is. So we would look for, we would see how much it would be to implement these at malls where it's heavily populated. The intent here is to get people to respond.
Here's my concern, and you can almost ask yourselves individually. Almost every individual in this room can find some fault with government. And normally when you have these processes, people vent those faults. Whether they're legitimate faults or not, who knows? It depends on the person. Whether it's your perception, whether it's your particular priorities on what government should be doing. You're creating this vehicle where people are venting, and now if you don't have something that is a companion item that solves those concerns, you look even more inept, in my opinion. To me, there should be more put into talking about what we have done, what the road system was like, and there should be old pictures that show that, because people tend to forget. When you get on 112, you kind of forget what it used to look like when you were getting off going to Okeechobee 36, and it still has congestion, but people tend to forget what it used to look like and what you've done to make those improvements. I think we need to spend more time maybe through the website and through tutorials when people have concerns, directing them to what you have truly done with your road network system, what it looked like before, what it looks like now. To me, to have kiosks where people can get to go in and just vent, man, people will vent all day not only about the expressway, the county, the city, the state. People don't like government for the most part, but they need government and want government to do the things that they want them to do. And so I don't know if you open up a Pandora's box by putting something like this in place where people get this chance to vent, and then they vent it and they're waiting on some resolution to the event, and you aren't really solving it because maybe your work program said this is what is happening, this is what we've done, and there's no way of redressing those concerns. So to me, you have to be very cautious of this venting box that you open up if you can't solve those venting issues. That's something to look at. Because I can't tell you, I don't see many people going into a government booth and saying, well, this is a great thing you guys are doing. I just don't see it.
Yeah, board members, if I may, again, this was a discussion. This is a brainstorming. These were ideas we came up with. You're right. I mean, and I'll tell you, the reason we thought of this is every time we have had interaction with a person, whether it came through the website, whether it was at a community meeting, whether it was a casual conversation after a board meeting, after you have a conversation about who MDX is and who MDX isn't, typically they understand. And typically they agree. And they say, we get it. The problem, and one of the, and you brought up one of the concerns we had here, is that when you have the ability to say anything, the expectation of the person is that that person is going to solve it all. The majority of the issues with MDX are misconceptions. So telling somebody that's not MDX, that's the state of Florida, that's fine for us, but does that solve it for the person? So, yeah, we hear you. I mean, that we discussed all of this in our internal brainstorming, but we put it out on the table for your conversation. So we hear you.
I want to add, yes, this is a think big, so all ideas were put in, so we all think about what else could we do, if they're good, if they're not. We'll get to vote on it and vent. For me, I understand that we want to get out to the street and provide information, but at what cost? For me, the cost has a lot to do with it. These things can end up being vandalized, then that will add a cost. These things, if you put them in the right places, which will be malls, will be quite expensive because you got to go where the people are. Where else are you going to go? Mm-hmm. So that adds another expense. And I think that even though this is well intended, and I know a little bit about marketing, there are other ways of getting the message out that will not cost money. If we start putting things on a scale, what can we do? What source of funding should we find? Where do we go? This will be at the bottom because there are other ways of getting the message out that will avoid all these other things. That's my feeling just on this particular item. On the chat, on the previous one, for me, that's something that we should be doing now. We should not be waiting for later. If it needs to be priced, we need to find out what it is, but as a customer service experience for toll collection, that has to be done, and I'll say it very clear. And it's the same thing that you're going to be on the next item. There are certain things that we do need to improve the customer service experience. The collection of tolls is only going to get bigger. More cars are going to be on the road. More people are going to be owing tolls or not. So we need to figure that out, and we may need to look at the business rules that we do have in place now, and we need to see how we can improve them and amplify them, okay? And I'm going to say it again. I need a phone system that calls me back in 15 minutes and requires me not to wait. We need to do it. AT&T does it, FPL do it, and I hate them, and yet we don't have that yet in place, and we need to do it. So there are little things that we need to come back and we need to do on a regular basis, okay? Not just in the thing.
Madam Chair, good morning. This is Maurice Foray. Good morning.
We have the 80-year-old young person on the phone today. Welcome.
Yeah. And by the way, Madam Chair, we don't hate Florida Power Line, and we don't hate AT&T. We don't hate anyone. MDX is a lover, not a hater.
Absolutely. Here we go.
Okay. So the next idea that we been discussing internally is, I guess, a response to the recent trip calculator that was provided by the Herald recently. And this is really what we're looking at is a trip choice calculator. And what we want to do with this is really educate the public on what their choices cost. I mean, the Herald showed us what the trip on the MDX system will cost the commuter. But what does the choice cost? If you take your car from the same point A and drive it to point B, there's a cost associated with that. And if you take transit, there's a cost associated with transit. But there's also travel time and distance cost savings associated with those three choices. So this app that we want, or we can do it through a mobile app or through the website, it's letting the customer plug in that trip from point A to point B, and what it will do is that it will tell you what those choices are going to cost you, but it's also going to tell you what your time savings is for each one and what your distance cost savings is for each one, because there is a savings with these. There is a time and a cost savings associated with each one, which is not in the trip calculator that the Herald put out. So it was a very, it was a good tool to let people know what they're paying in tolls, but it didn't really tell them what they were saving by taking the toll road. This is going to enhance that. And this is really going to educate the public and saying that, listen, tolls is not a bad thing, because transportation costs money. No matter where you go, no matter how you get there, you're paying something to get to where you're going. Well, this app is going to tell you what you're paying, but it's also going to tell you what your time and cost savings are.
And a little preview to the next meeting, our communications. Our communications plan. If you think about it, not only is this trip calculator important to convey to the public, but if we're local and we're keeping it local, here's the decision. You could take the toll road, and the tolls are going to stay right here in Miami, and they're going to improve transportation in Miami. Or you can get off the toll road and just take the city streets and pay gas tax, and you're probably going to spend more on gas, because I don't care what the car says on the window, when you're in the streets and you're going through the signals, you're burning more gas, so you're getting less fuel efficiency. And it's okay. You're benefiting Wisconsin and you're benefiting other counties outside of Miami-Dade County. And I think that's an honest conversation that has to happen that doesn't happen. It's always about everything is free, the tolls cost money. That's not the way it costs. And the consumer and the commuters, and the reason toll roads around the world are popular is because consumers understand that. And they make a decision every day. Because, as one of our board members said the other day, that his father always told him, don't get off the highway, because then you won't get there on time. Try to get off 836 in peak hours and make it from the east to the west in any kind of a sensible time. Stay on the highway. You'll get there. You'll be there it'll be a reliable trip for you. So, anyways, you'll see some of those messages in the communication. I think it builds upon these things.
One, this, in my opinion, is really great. It's very now, and my mantra is educate, and letting everybody know. And I understand what you say, Javier, about the gas tax. They're paying gas tax either way. They're just paying less when they're going a shorter distance. And I think it's important that is told to our toll payers, because they don't get it. And I've been saying that for years and years and years, and you're finally coming to where I want you to be. How long do you think something like this would take to go live?
I think this is something that we can start looking into immediately. It could take anywhere between 3 to 6 months to see something that we can start testing, because it's we got to work with, we got to get all the data together, see how and I'm not a techie guy, so I think there's algorithms and stuff that you got to plug in to make sure that everything is apples to apples when you compare everything. We're going to be working. We've already talked to our IT guys internally. I think there's ways that we can get this thing rolled out. So one of the things that I would recommend is, we'll go back and look at it a little bit more in detail and come back one of the operations committee or at another subcommittee of the Think Big committee and give you better information as far as timeline and if there's any costs that are associated with it. Because right now, the idea is really fresh. We just looked at it based on everything that's been coming out. So, but we know that this is very doable. We know that we can get working on this right away, and I think in about a month or a month and a half, by the end of the summer, I can have better information for you guys on that.
I think I heard you said any cost. Obviously, there's going to be a cost, whether it be labor.
We just don't know what it is right now. We think we can do it for a relatively low cost. I'm hesitant to give a number, not knowing exactly what we need to put into this.
I'm not asking for a number, but what I am asking for is for expedited report on how long and how much something like this would cost.
What we'll end up doing, Ms. Fano, is that we'll take a vote on the items that we like, and we can put them into action item and then send them to the appropriate committees. So that way they can come back and they roll, because this is just a subcommittee. So right now these are all discussion items. So what we'll do, like you've already presented that you like it. I agree with you. This is a tool that we need to have. So what we'll do is we'll handpick a few of these items and we'll put them into action item and then send them to the appropriate committee so we can get the funding and get them underway. Of course, but the only way to figure it out is to then send them to committee. Because this should be in the perhaps intergovernmental committee. Because it's an educational piece, a great tool for the homepage, but there is a great value in knowing this. A lot of people are going to be awakened that it probably costs more to get on the bus than it does to get on your car and ride our toll system.
Well, not directly related to the trip choice calculator, I've always wondered, is there any way to quantify, like when you have a project like the 826, 836 interchange, the savings in improved mobility versus what it costs for your tolls? Is there any way to quantify that and get that information out there? How much people are actually saving by paying tolls?
Very good comments.
Yeah, travel time savings. I think those are fairly simple to calculate. And there's congestion price, the price of congestion, how quickly you get from point A to point B. Those are easy to quantify.
Madam Chair, when you calculate, the bus against, the people who use the MDX, I think that we have to put it also some depreciation for the cars. Depreciation and the license plate or something like that. In that way, we're going to play, a plain level field. Okay.
So when we adjourned last week, we had already discussed the opportunities with the economic development and the idea of this Dolphin commuter rail, which is obviously a long-term idea, but it's something that we feel is something that's being discussed very heavily now in the county. It's being looked at again by the MPO. They're revisiting the study of the East-West Rail. And really the idea here is for MDX to be a major player in this project and in this idea, looking at MDX assets along the 836 corridor, looking at the existing 97th Avenue toll plaza that we recently closed, using existing assets to promote transit and promote options for our commuters. And really the biggest component here is the development side, because there's opportunities, and I'm going to go ahead and just go to the next slide now. It's the economic development opportunities that go along with these mobility options, because it's looking at MDX assets not just along specific corridors, but looking at MDX assets system-wide. And I'm using 97th Avenue as an example because it's the one that really right now is on the system. It's it'll be very convenient to the commuters. It could be convenient for transit services, but developing that toll plaza into some kind of retail, some kind of concession, something that provides us with non-toll revenue, is something that we need to look at, not just there, but system-wide, leveraging our assets. And again, tying it into the potential of the MIC development, if we are successful in getting that handed over to us, then it becomes a bigger fruit or a bigger carrot to dangle in front of the private sector, because, we know that commuter rail is a difficult task to take on. And P3s typically will not look at commuter services, but if you lump all that together, at that opportunity with economic development, the MIG development, with MDX assets as a development, now you're providing something that could be more interesting to the private sector, because with the development comes the dollars to be able to operate and maintain these type of services. And again, partnering with the county, partnering with SFRTA, looking at all the opportunities available to us to make these options happen.
Juan, I think it's very important that we actually look at all our MDX assets and see how we can leverage them and what we can do with them, because going after perhaps a concession, and I know you marked here retail development, whatever it is that we might be able to do on a non-toll revenue approach, I think we need to do this parentheses, separate and aside from everything that we're doing here. We need to look at them all, okay? And it's something we need to look at them hard and see what we can do, okay? Now that's thinking outside the box.
Now, the key to this, the key bullet to this slide that now plays into the next slides is the non-toll revenue, because the other idea that we have is what we're calling the Dolphin commuter shuttle, and this is a peak hour shuttle along 836, and really it's to alleviate the congestion that we're going to be creating during construction when we start building out 836 between 57th Avenue all the way to I-95. We know that the MDT is going to have an express bus service eventually on 836. This is the precursor to that. This is not to compete with MDT. This is to complement MDT and even help them establish ridership along our corridor. And one of the things that we want to do here is look at the MDX assets, look at surplus land, but not just MDX assets and areas adjacent to the expressways. Let's look at areas in the county where MDT is looking to establish park and rides and see how we can help them now. We know that MDT is looking at areas west of the Turnpike to establish parking ride facilities. I'll give you an example: is 147th Avenue and 8th Street. There's a huge. They're looking to do something in that area. There's a lot of strip malls right now in those areas that have underutilized parking spaces. There's opportunities here where we can come in and, working with MDT or now, we can look at how you can lease out some of those spaces for park and ride, for a interim parking ride facility while MDT is establishing their facilities. Sure. But at the same time, what we're doing is that we are advancing these shuttles and these services along the 836 corridor to the MIG, to downtown, to Dayland, looking at existing transit locations and taking commuters to those locations. Again, it's not to compete with transit, it's to complement transit and give people options. We say that paying a toll is a choice. Well, let's show them where their choices are. And this is what this idea does.
Providing another option, but it gets aligned with the Dolphin commuter rail.
Correct.
That's what you're saying.
Yes.
So this would come in first as a play, waiting for the commuter
service.
rail to...
Waiting for commuter rail to happen, waiting for
developed.
the express bus service to happen. Right. This is something that will advance the ridership and promote those services when they come online, to not have to be waiting to get off the ground.
Yeah, I have a question. That means that we would be in the transit business. Is that correct?
We would be looking to, whether we are doing it through partnerships with existing contracts that the county has. We've looked at what's available out there, and Doral has shuttle services, the county has shuttle services, the city has shuttle services. This could be an opportunity to piggyback off existing contracts where we can get some of those services with the MDX name on it and saying, here's the 836 shuttle to the MIC, to Dayland, to downtown.
I understand, but here's my point, and I just want to put this on the record. MDX has always been strongly opposed to putting our money, toll money, into transit operations or transit deficits for anybody, including ourselves. And for this one member out of 13 here, I will be totally opposed to us putting 1 cent into any transit operation business. Now, I don't have any problems in helping them build the infrastructure. As long as we get paid back. I don't have any problems in doing anything that enhances transportation from a structural point of view. Operations, the transportation union, the other issues that come with it. That's not MDX.
Thank you.
I know, it's not a new idea, but I know this is another thing that we've been discussing, and it's been in discussion. It's the last mile service. We're looking at, one of the things that we can do as well is look at providing that last mile service for customers that are coming into the MIC to transit hubs and want to get to their final destination. I'm using the examples of the car-to-go service. When we started talking about taking over the MIC, we met with the car-to-go people. They're already here in Miami. They actually have service that within the city of Miami where they provide these little smart cars all over the county in certain areas. It's a website that you sign on as a member. You get access to these vehicles. There's a cost per mile cost per minute that you pay to use these cars, but it takes you from that last point A to point B, so you can do whatever you got to do, and then you can come back. One of the benefits of this is that you can leave the car. You don't have to the return trip is not required when you use these car-to-go services. The way that these services are set up is you can take your car from point A to point B and you can find another mode of transportation. At the end of the day, these cars are fitted with GPSs that the companies know where they are, and they'll pick them up and bring them back to the origin. Or if it's a predetermined area within the zone of use, they'll just leave it there for somebody else to pick it up whenever they want. Cars2Go is very interested in expanding their services in the county, but they need the hubs. So this is an opportunity that kind of ties into the other opportunities. Once these hubs are created and we can help advance some of those, these opportunities come on board where we can expand these services and using, again, tying into the economic development and non-toll revenue. There's opportunities here to make these things less costly for MDX.
Madam Chair. Again, this is through a third party. In other words, Cars2Go or somebody else would be operating these things.
Correct.
One of the things that we have to also keep an eye on this last mile issue, and this might be an opportune time for me to mention this, is I've noticed in the newspapers that Uber is no longer able to go into Fort Lauderdale Airport. They're prohibited from going into our airport. And I think that's just a terrible loss. And I realize it has to do with the taxi union and the taxi owners and association and all of that. And that has to be worked out. But I would hope that in all these things that MDX will be involved with, that we will have the opportunity for Uber and Lyft and whoever else is in the business to not be excluded from any of our positions. And so that's one thing that I wanted to mention. The second thing that I wanted to mention is that Juan Toledo met the other day, and I went to see this fellow Dover, Victor Dover, and on bicycles. As you know, this bicycle thing is a rage in this community, and it's all over the country now. And I would have never thought that would happen, frankly, because of the heat and humidity of Miami. But I'm just shocked. And yesterday I was talking to some of my grandkids, and they said, "What do you mean you wouldn't ride a bicycle?" Of course we'd ride a bicycle. So they have a complete different view of communications, and if they could go, one of them lives in South Beach and works on Brickell, and he says if he could go by bicycle, he'd go by bicycle. I said, "You got to be kidding. You'd go by bicycle in the heat of Miami?" Yeah. So the point I'm trying to make is that that's a form of transportation that seems to be a popular form. And I really think, Madam Chair, that one of the things that MDX ought to really look into is becoming a major sponsor of bicycles. Obviously, we're not going to put money. We're not going to take our lanes and make them into bicycle lanes. But wherever we do new projects and things that we could provide. For example, one of the...
not on the expressway.
Obviously not on the expressway. Mr. Executive Director, as you know, one of the big things that they're pushing in these bike people is the connection between this, I forget what the name of it is, underline? Yeah, the underline that goes from downtown Miami to Dadeland. Now they're working with the FEC, and the FEC, they're no dummies. They're smart people. They know how to get public relations value, and so they're talking to these bike people to use the Ludlam Trail to take it all the way to the MIC. Now, guess what these people are thinking now? They think they figured out that the MIC is the center of town, and they want at all costs for all these bicycle paths to link to the MIC, because then they can get on the trains and go wherever they're going, the University of Miami or whatever. and so that someone that lives in that Ludlam area can use the bike trail to get to the MIC, and from there go to the University of Miami. Yeah. So I think that one of the things that we ought to put down on this committee is that we ought to become big supporters. And what I was trying to say is that the linkage between the Underline and the Ludlam Trail is MDX, because we have a greenway, which is an embankment, obviously not a lane. But if you take part of the embankment and put a wall, you can get a bicycle path that would then link the Underline with the Ludlam Trail.
Along Snapper Creek.
Snapper Creek, and I guess, one, that's what you were talking to him about, right?
Yeah, we met last week, and they were talking about the Underline. They talked about all the greenways, not only here in Florida, but how the greenway, the greenway, the Florida East Coast, I guess Florida East Greenway, which is really throughout all of Florida, and they want to tie all these bike connections together.
To me, in other words, I was amazed as to the amount of work and how far this is.
We looked at areas along the system where we could potentially provide connections, and I think that's something that we would
add this, Madam Chair. I would like to add just bicycles without getting any specific, and then after staff looks into it, come back with some specifics to the appropriate committee.
Good, board members, and I think Juan alluded to a number of mobility options, and most of them, all of them, are linked to economic development or our assets. So I'm going to take a step back and I'm going to pose a question, because we have a strategic plan, and the strategic plan is looking at various ways MDX is going to look at the future. One of which is these hubs. We have assets, potential assets, and we want to develop access and gain economic development out of it. So here's the question. Years and years ago, probably before I ever got involved in this, someone asked the question of potential development. Would a developer pay their fair share for infrastructure improvements to get their development approved if it was bigger than a certain amount? The obvious question was absolutely, because the developer wants that development and that access, right? They're going to battle how much of it. So let's think of it this way. If we have these assets, you've got the intermodal center, whether it's MDX, Florida DOT, whomever, and we listed all these mobilities, and I agree we shouldn't get into the business of operating, but why not establish what the mobility improvements are at the time the developments are being discussed? Isn't that the highest and best leverage position from a transportation agency? Because typically what we say is, let's do this, we'd like to generate some money, and after we generate money, we'll apply them to certain projects, and it's dependent on, who prioritizes what. Well, here, if you have the intermodal center, 97th Avenue, something along 836 out west or whatever, or eventually 836-18 that goes all the way down to the airport, why not say that as a condition of whomever's going to develop or have a concession of all these facilities, this must be in place? And let the developer say, I can meet 80% of it, 70% of it. Then you have to come up. I don't know what the answer is. This was think big. This was think outside the box. The other day at the chamber, I talked about a transit impact fee, instead of a road impact fee.
And they didn't scream.
No one screamed. Look at downtown Miami. Look at all aboard Florida. Look at all the stuff they're doing. You know, at what time do you have the highest leverage to get something from the development community? And if that something is going to improve mobility and give choices, why not at least put it on the table? That was the thought process that we had.
Amen.
Okay, Juan.
Sorry. Finally, the last idea that we have to present is this real-time carpooling. It's a market pooling network using an application that people will sign up for. They'll become members, and what it does is that it matches drivers and riders along the same routes. So again, it's providing options. Not everybody has to. You know, if you don't want to get out of your car, well, maybe you can share the ride with somebody else and share the cost of that ride with other riders going along the same route or going to the same destinations. This is a service that is being tested now in I believe in Austin. There is the potential for federal sponsorships where they're looking to see how they can help. There's grants available that help subsidize the startup fees or the startup costs for these services, as well as the trip to cost. And this is an idea that the Texas, it's like the TTI in Texas, the transportation, right, put out a paper the other day that this is an application that is best suited for toll authorities to provide options to their commuters to encourage carpooling. So again, this is a way to provide a mobility solution using technology. And I was told that these people, the company's called Karma, they are expected to be, they've said that they might be here for the IBTTA AET conference to showcase some of what they got, and I think it'll be very interesting to see that. But again, an opportunity to do something a little bit outside the box, providing that app, looking to see what grants are available to help fund this. But again, like I said before, all this is tied into economic development and non-toll revenue. There is a cost of transportation. That doesn't mean we need to use the toll dollars. There's opportunities here where we might be able to use non-toll revenue to help bring a lot of these ideas to fruition. So again, within a 6 to 12 months period, our plan is to develop these ideas, really see which ones we can implement right away, which ones, and give you timelines on what we can do, and get it done as soon as possible.
We're going to go ahead and do an exercise. First of all, we're going to go around the room and get comments so we hear everybody's opinion on this, and then we can go in and say what we like or didn't like, or new ideas, if you already have some new ideas that you want to share with us. I'd like to start with Mr. Walters.
I would like to see us not abandon the interactive aspect. Not necessarily that one, but I was kind of impressed with what Board Member Holland was talking about, how when people can see the improvements that have been made, and if we could somehow develop, and maybe on the website, an interactive display showing the Okeechobee exit before, showing the Okeechobee exit now, showing the 826, 836 interchange a few years ago, and what it's going to look like next year. If we can do that type of thing, I think that would go a long way in educating the public as far as where their money's going.
So like an application for all the major jobs of the way they used to be and what it is today.
Yep, because people forget. People forget.
Oh, very fast.
You know, one of the first projects that I became aware of that was completed by MDX was the Okeechobee exit. And what a difference. What an incredible difference that made. And I kind of forgot about it, but Robert brought it up.
Very good point. So let's add that. So on that other one that gave you the price, we're going to add this component above that one. Keep it there together to see what we can do. Any other comments? Any preference on items that you saw here that you thought that were really good that we should pursue?
I do agree with the mayor, though. You don't want to get into operations. I mean, that's a hole that has no bottom, and it would make no sense.
I think we're aligning a lot of us in that. Yes.
I agree with Mr. Walters. I also voiced my opinion about the app. I like that. The idea that kiosks that sort of dissuades me is that it is not interactive in the sense that customer service, I hate when I call and I get these machines I'm talking to. And I hear that from people all the time, in this day where everything's so automated. I'd like to see where our customer service is more user-friendly, where people get a real voice and get to talk to people and get their questions answered. My favorite still is, because it's very now, is the app and enhancing customer service with real answers from real people.
And any other comments on any of the other items? Very good. Thank you. Vice Chair?
I just want to commend you, Madam Chair, for the Think Big brainstorming idea. I think it's wonderful. I think we ought to do it every year, and I think it ought to be a precedent that has now been set. And in the future, I would hope that the future chairs would follow suit. I think they're all good ideas, and I think they all have to be vetted. We have to make sure that they have long-term standing and that they are within not only the scope of what MDX can and should be doing, but that they're affordable, that they don't conflict with other things that we have in mind. And we also have to understand that there are very many ways to mitigate the anti-toll sentiment. Here and all over the country, by the way, I can show you clippings from all over the United States where tolls exist, that everybody hates tolls. We're not going to win the popularity contest with tolls. What I think we can do is mitigate and come up with things where make people think, well, this agency really is doing out-of-the-box thinking. They are thinking big, and they're doing things that are helpful to people. And I really think that the single most important thing that MDX has to do in the next couple of years is to take one small but giant step out of highways into some kind of mass transit system that will help the bound people of Miami-Dade County who will have no public transit without getting into the transit business. And then we can do that. But we have to be very careful how we do that. In other words, we cannot afford to make a mistake. It has to be very carefully thought through, and it has to be very adroitly done so that when it's done and over with, it's not, in other words, we can't shoot for a single or a double. This has got to be a home run. And I personally think it can only be one project. I don't think we can go out and do 2 or 3 projects. I think we just do one project that will make a very significant difference to thousands and thousands of people. And I think that will get us further than anything else. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Very good. Thank you. Member Treasurer Pena.
Well, first of all, good morning, Madam Chair. Like Mr. Ferreira, I commend you for putting this and having the wisdom and bringing us all together. And I think it should be a recurring event that we force ourselves to think big every year. So, secondly, I'd like to genuinely wish Mayor Ferreira happy birthday, belated birthday. And I also want to commend Juan Toledo for his presentation and his haircut. I think that very fashionable. But good job, Juan. Going to the specifics of this proposal, and I know there are some ideas, and we're not limited to these ideas. I think the kiosk sounds like a costly, and I know this is all good ideas. Let me just say they're good ideas. It's a matter of how viable they are from a financial perspective, from a practical perspective, from a political, what are the consequences? We talked about transit. I think that has some serious political issues there. But as it relates to the kiosk, I think if we're going to dig down a little deeper, we may want to look at those costs for sure. But you may not need to commit to a kiosk, a physical structure that big. It's maybe a flat screen TV that's interactive with a stand. So if you're going to consider that, if we're going to consider that, it doesn't have to be a full-fledged screen, and that screen can be interactive. It can have pictures of, and we put it in a few locations where it would be an extension of our communication outreach component. And again, I was in the...
You mean like they do in London, where they have these boards?
Yep. They have them all over. I used to be in this digital signage business, so they're relatively inexpensive. And a stand and a TV, they're interactive. You just touch them, you get information, and it just creates a presence. And it does, if you tap on a particular section of the screen, it gives you more information. And then when somebody's not touching it, it will play, whether it's pictures of how, the 36 used to look like versus today or whatever, which shows the value of what we've done with people's money. So, but then again, that's a part of a expanded conversation, but I think it needs to be vetted out. I think that regarding the economic development opportunity, I think that's from a alternative toll revenue perspective, I think that requires a more serious commitment from us. I would almost suggest that we consider a ad hoc committee to look in and dig deep at these alternative revenue opportunities, specifically given some of the things that were started here today, and look at that and say, okay, we have this land. I think leasing property to strategic partners, whether it's this Car2Go folks or whomever, we don't know unless we put it out there. I think we may invite public input and say, what would you do with our surplus lands, and give our thoughtful political leaders an opportunity also to chime in. And I think that's something to consider. Again, these are just my thoughts of the ideas that were kind of promulgated, put forth by the committee or by staff. One thing that came out of a conversation with staff, which is not in here, that I would like to consider, is a workshop on finances. We're about transparency. And this came, from a conversation with Marie Schaefer, give credit where credit is due. Give the opportunity. If somebody really wants to look under the hood, not only can you go on our website, not only can you call us, but, let's go through the expense and the effort to say, we're being proactive. I believe in loving people to death. And this is an example of giving a lot of love and invite, whether it's here at County Hall or any other forum, and we would put ourselves out there to say, what numbers do you want to see? What is it that you want? And have a committee that's comprised of elected officials and whoever. Again, this is just an idea that needs to be formulated, thought through. I can't tell you that I've have given it serious thought about the political implications, and it's more about the awareness of what we do with people's money, and that is the intent. And I think there's some public relations value in letting people know that come look under the hood, look at how we're spending your money, give us some ideas. And I think anytime we create that outreach, and if only 5 people show up, well, 5 people show up, but we created the opportunity for 150 or 250 people to show up. We can't force people to come. So I think it is us being, proactive and putting out there our transparency, and to negate the opportunity for misinformation that's out there, or future misinformation that may be conveniently promulgated. So I think that's something that we may want to consider at the appropriate time. I agree with Mr. Ferre on the transit. We need to stay far away from that transit hole. And with that, I'll turn it over. Thank you.
If my wife is listening, love calls. Talking about showing a lot of love. Love calls. So there's always gonna be some finances behind that love. I want to go over, I guess, a few things. One, I do support the custom experience trip choice calculator. I think that's going to be very important to breaking down just how the system was put together, how it saves you, and the cost analysis, whether you use arterial roads versus our system. Maybe there's an element to that can be added, would be a level of service, show the level of how much capacity we've created on this system that helps be able to transpose into people's minds the value. On the Dolphin commuter rail, I would like to see if we can look at least explore the option of people, or at least there being some sort of way of adding vehicles onto the rail, where you can pull your car onto a train and it drops off downtown at another location, which obviously could be an infrastructural site that we've helped create for those folk who may just want to have their vehicles close by, because there's some people who work downtown, they don't necessarily stay in the office all day. They may work downtown and have to leave and go places for lunch and come back. And sometimes they like their personal effects with them for those who just refuse to leave their car. Maybe there's a way of getting them attached onto this commuter rail and off at some point. I do love the idea of the last mile with someone like a car to go or some other entity, preferably a local entity that can do it if there's a way of leveraging that. I've mentioned before that I've always thought that we should work on some sort of video that can be actually disseminated within the school system early on to get kids to understand the cost of infrastructure and how these things are put together. I know before I got on the board and the first time I saw a contract for an expansion of a system and I saw the cost, like any other layperson, I'm like, what the heck are they doing? Why would it cost that much money? Because you don't know all the intricacies of what it takes to develop the system. And the fact that most of your highway corridors and the expansion of those highway corridors are typically, when you expand, you're taking businesses because you don't want to run through residential areas. When you take businesses, the cost now of buying that land is much more expensive than residential homes. And I think people need to understand those cost factors when they talk about having an infrastructure in place that moves goods and services. So I've always thought that a video, and maybe it can be worked out through the Miami-Dade Community College group, where they really kind of walk you from concept to construction and completion, what these things look like and what's all involved in it. Because I think the more people understand that, the more they step back and say, I never looked at it that way. And I think that helps us in the long haul. So I think that's very important, in addition to whatever we put together on our website. And it could mirror one another. But I think many schools will welcome having these videos where the kids get a chance to see how this works, and we can probably pay to have these videos put together. The other thing that I would like to see, and I don't know if it works, but I know we've never really had a real discussion on it. We've talked about the possibility of express lanes, and I know there's board members who support it, there's board members who have concerns with it. But have we ever looked at the zipper lanes and whether or not there's a way of putting a zipper lane down our, at least the 836, where it moves over a lane of two for inbound traffic coming into downtown in the mornings, and then it moves back 2 lanes the other way in the afternoons to take more traffic out to help build capacity that way. It may obviously be a serious expense to it. There may be some alternatives out there. But I think if there was a way of adding that capacity directionally, obviously you guys would have to do the engineering to see if we just crowd it on both sides, then it doesn't work. But if there's an opportunity to add that capacity at the end, in the evenings or in the mornings, I think that goes a long way in at least getting people comfortable that we're moving traffic. I don't know how Tampa does it, so.
Reversible.
Oh, the reversible lanes? Yep.
Reversible.
I think we need to look at all of those kind of options that kind of helps move the capacity of people around. And with that, Madam Chair, I'm very happy that we had this committee meeting. I've always thought, even years ago, that there's so many innovative ideas out there, and that at each board member, or at least every quarter, we should entertain an innovative idea, whether it works or not. It's something about forcing your mind through that process. It keeps you on cutting edge of looking for creative things and innovative things to solve your system or solve concerns in your system, as opposed to just kind of doing the rudimentary contracts, expansion. But people come in here, they have these particular softwares and products. Let them present, see if it's something we like. Let our engineers tell us whether it works on our system or not. But the fact that you go through that dialogue and that conversation like we're doing today, it keeps us creative. And I think as long as you're creative, you're being productive, and ultimately you put out a better product year in and year out. So again, I want to thank Madam Chair for putting this here together.
I like what Mr. Holland said about the past, the present, and the future. And I think that's going to be very good if we have a conversation with Miami-Dade College, and maybe they are able to do some innovation for us, try videos, that the Okeechobee ramp, that is great. And also that we like to see, I read the Miami Herald almost every day, and I see that every week when you have some, at least in the Spanish Miami Herald, you have, if the University of Miami have the Cuban studies, and to try to announce some of this meeting, because, I have been here for 97 days. And in these 97 days, I haven't seen anyone from the public that they have been coming to that podium to say something about in favor or against, the MDX. And I think that, it's amazing, because some people criticize, the authority, but no one is coming here to expose some of their views. I think that's going to be very interesting that we are able to advertise in some that column that is, I think that is for free to have, this type of meeting. The other thing that I like, the trip choice calculator, to have every cost involved. If you go in the bus, if you go in the car, sometimes the car you have to pay, the license plate. You have to have some depreciation. You have to have, the gasoline, how many miles. If you go through the freeway or the tolls, you're going to be doing better mileage. And the other thing that I would like that, that I know that we are not going to be in the transportation business, because that is not the place. But I would like to see maybe we are able to have some type of jitney in the 836. Jitneys, maybe people, particular people that they are able, to put it, their vans and working with us. They have to have their insurance. They have to have their certified. And maybe we are able to have maybe 10 or 12 people that are able to go in this type of van, because they are using, in Biscayne Boulevard, at least, to downtown Miami, and they're working. The thing about, the Miami-Dade Transit, Mayor Ferrer the other day was talking about it, that it was too expensive, $650 million. You know what? Why? Because the union, sometimes people, they're making too much money, and they are not that, the productivity is not there. But if we have some type of private enterprise that they're able, to run through some of this expressway, I think going to be a great idea. Thank you. And muchas gracias por la grandes ideas. Okay.
Thank you. Sí, muchas gracias. Eso bueno. Sometimes it's good to go ahead and change into our native tongue, right? First, I have to thank staff. The approach that we took on the Think Big is to get everybody thinking in what else could we do to improve the system, or otherwise, what else could we do to improve this community? And the challenge was taken, and the challenge was well received and responded. So I congratulate all the professionals at MDX that they came to the table and they brought some very good ideas. For those that were not part of the first committee meeting, we know that there is an item that already left the Think Big and is on to the board for final approval, which is the dividend program, which basically says that any excess revenue that is not used for the construction program, not needed for the ratio, not needed for operations and maintenance, will go back to our stakeholder, which is our user. And I'm going to have Marie walk us through that little program, very quick synopsis, just because I'm going to ask for one thing. As we go and we approve it at the board, I'm going to ask staff to work with the treasurer and policy to write up the business rules for the governance of that idea, because we want to make sure that in the future that it stays and it's part of the business rules of MDX. It doesn't get washed away by just someone that basically gets inside the house and feels that that money should not be going back to the proper individuals that gave it to us anyway. Okay? We have to respect our stakeholders. You know what? That's right. I skipped you. you're up there and I skipped you. I'm going to yield for a moment, and I'm going to let you voice your opinion on the items discussed. Go ahead, Javier.
Thank you. And I just wanted to do it before you jumped into the dividend program. I think what you were doing going around the room was just opening the floor to different suggestions and ideas. Is that correct?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Am I correct in assuming that what you've been doing and going around the room and to the different board members is for different ideas and kind of opening the floor to thoughts?
Opening the idea for two things: opinion on what we saw before us, and also new ideas to include.
Okay. As to the new ideas part of it, and these are not, perhaps, the name of the committee is Think Big. This is not that big, but it's something that I think I want to throw out there anyways. Yesterday, the day before, I met with Courtney and with his wife Tasha, along with Mario and Bernardo. And I shared with them a couple of things. One is that I think that it would go a long way. I heard another board member say something a little while ago about creating a movie or a video. I think it would be something that's not that costly to create an animation that can graphically describe what it means to close the system. We've tried time and time again to explain what it is that our board did with the tolling last year or earlier last year. But I don't think that people truly understand when you explain to them that you close the system. Those of us that are intimately involved understand, but at least when I speak to people, I can see it in their eyes that I kind of drop them off. And I think there should be something that we could point to on our website that, even in a real simple animated way, shows people what our roadways look like before and after the tolling system, and why and what it means to have a closed system. So that's one. And then number two, I think that we need to start thinking about ways to humanize ourselves a little bit with the community. And what I mean by that is simple gestures, and one of the things that came to mind is perhaps us, it's very difficult for us to have anybody in the community that people relate to in the form of a celebrity or an athlete, that people relate to as, being involved with MDX, because people charge for that. We would never get away with paying for stuff like that. However, we can get involved with organizations that make sense. And one of the organizations that I think it makes sense for us to have a little bit more of a presence with is the Miami Marlins. Why? Because the Marlins Stadium is immediately adjacent to our most important roadway, obviously 836. And I think simple things such as a greater presence of our patrols, of our patrol trucks around the exits on 836 on game days, things that affiliate us to where people identify that there's a link, that there's a connection between us and the Marlins. And I think this will go a long way. And again, I have no vested interest in the Marlins, and I can go on forever as to a lot of issues that I have with the ownership, but that has nothing to do with my point. My point has to do with picking something in the community that we can connect to, that there's a natural nexus to because of our proximity to the stadium, and I think it would go a long way for our reputation. That's all I have for now.
All right, very good. We'll write that down. We've got to identify it by a particular name. Is that like a sponsorship program? A partnership?
Yeah, partnership.
A partnership with another organization that has nothing to do with transportation.
Right.
Okay, we'll write it down. Okay, and Luz, welcome. Would you like to chime in on these items? Very good. And with that, I'm going to go in, and I'm going to handle the approach to this subcommittee this way. I want to break down the items in 3 buckets, okay? Because they need to go to appropriate places. So the 3 buckets are going to be the now. What are the items that we would like now? 2, the approach that we take that we can explore and perhaps in RFP approach. And 3, on the approach of the items that we have that have to do with economic development and transportation, like the rail, that would only be something that we would end up negotiating as part of the MIC contract. It's not that we're getting into the transit sector, but it's something that we would be willing to do for transit if and when the time comes that they negotiate with us and give us the MIC. So keep that in mind. Understand the 3 buckets, okay? It's not that we're getting into the transit business, is that item is there and a couple of the items that go with it that should be in a particular bucket as an approach of something that we would do if they give us the MIC. So that would be in item 3. So just to be clear, economic opportunity, Dolphin commuter rail, also the part of the Dolphin commuter shuttle, and the rent-a-car, and even perhaps the carpooling real time would all be part of the leveraging that we would be able to do with the MIC enterprise. It would all fall under the MIC enterprise. This is not using toll dollars. This is using the MIC enterprise funding after it's built. Okay? We all understand? So putting that in that bucket.
Would you add bicycles to that? Bicycle.
And we add bicycle to that. Very good. Okay? So we're going to leave that in that bucket. So we're going to be asking staff to use that to go back to the county and also the director of the transportation airport to go in and say, these are ideas that have come out and we would like to do them for you as part of the deal for the MIC. Okay? Now, on the other 2, what can we do in terms of the concession? I think on the part of the concession and how we leverage our assets, maybe that approach, what we should do is come out with an RFP and call for ideas so we can explore new ways and get the marketplace to come to us with ideas of what we can do. Okay? Because
Madam
there
Chair,
are several
I agree.
assets.
And I think in the past we published a request for information or ideas. What happens is that what came out of that was most of the people that responded were consulting firms who wanted us to hire them to guide us through the process. So that kind of defeated it.
That would defeat
so
the
we would
purpose.
have to be very clear that if we put out a request for ideas, it's for the product, not for someone to guide us. We have people that can guide us through the
Correct.
process.
It would be specific for the product. So the point that I want to make with that one is it needs to go back to the drawing board. We need to get very creative, and it should be ad ops perhaps, or even what Pina said, that it could be an ad hoc committee that just basically addresses what else could we do with our assets and let new ideas develop from that, and then maybe do a call of ideas. And then I want another bucket that basically calls for the now. And that was a lot of the items that basically we were discussing. And the now is the chat for the website to improve the customer experience and customer service. The before and after video for the different projects. The trip choice calculator, that's more of a now. And that could be something that's extremely helpful and awesome because it's going to reveal the myths that we think that there are other modes that are less expensive and perhaps they are not. And then what was the other item that we were all thinking a video, an educational video that is used on transportation, that we give it to our marketing team to go to town with, and then also to explore perhaps some synergy with some sponsorship programs or partners that we might consider. So those are more in the now. And if we all agree with the 3 buckets, basically what would happen is if we agree, we can take a vote. And on the now, it would go into intergovernmental, so we get more information and we identify the funding needed for these items. So they later can become action item. But they would be sitting at a committee so they can progress to their next level. And then the other 2, maybe create under the Budget and Finance Committee for the assets, Mr. Pena. If you welcome it, then we send it to you. And on the MIC, we just tell staff to go to town. Let's negotiate. We're willing to do it. Did I cover all the items?
Yeah, actually, if I can, we took an action last week on a now, which was the cashback dividends program.
Right.
I think the action that we could take today, if we agree with now on the live chat before or after trip choice calculator, is that it becomes part of our communications plan and we intertwine it into it, because a lot of that is how we interact with the community and how we enhance the experience and education with the community. So I think that can happen now, and it's part of what we're going to hear from Courtney and Tasha in the next committee meeting. The other 2, you can just refer them. You can refer them to the Budget and Finance /operations for the RFI, and we can have a conversation on assets and how to manage it and what we want to put out. And the Economic Development /MIC, mobility ideas, all of that, you've got the operations and you've got the MIC committee, and you've given us the marching order. So
okay, so basically the only one that we need to take a vote on is the now, and it's a vote to move it on to intergovernmental. So intergovernmental can, adding more work. Intergovernmental can govern that item and seek information and get budgeting, and it could move forward.
Madam Chair, I'll make that motion.
Is there a second on that item? I got a couple of seconds. Any other discussion on those items? Anything that we missed that we need to add? Okay, the question is called. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone wishes to be recorded as a no? The item passes unanimously. Very good. I was going to put you on the stand for a minute just to give us a brief synopsis. Absolutely, because we do, on the stand. We do have a couple of members that were not here before that I'd like for them to fully understand the dividend program and where we're going with that, because that is an action item that's going to the board.
Certainly.
Thank you.
The dividend program really stems from the fact that MDX has always operated as a public and a private entity. We've always been very fiscally responsible. The differences between a private and MDX is we have a public purpose. We have many of the similar commitments to our bondholders to be fiscally responsible, to deliver the projects, to spend the money for the intended purpose. And all of those commitments are very similar to our commuters, our customers. So the thought behind the cashback dividend program is to really give the commuters a financial stake into the system. So the more efficient MDX is, we have the ability to declare dividends to our customers. And the way it would work is after we finish the audit, once a year, we'll determine that based upon the financial model that we've created in order to fund up the cash, the construction fund and the reserves and so forth, let's just say we have a debt service coverage of 190, and our financial plan requires a 185. We will look at taking a portion of the differential, what we need to fund up our reserves, and going to Budget and Finance and declaring a dividend. So the authority may declare a $3 million dividend, and they will also declare on how that would be portioned to the customers that did register to the program. It could be 20% in 1 year, it could be 10% 1 year, but essentially what it does is it really lowers the customer who really is impacted and paying a toll on a daily basis into the system. So they have a stake in the system. They have a piece of the system now. So MDX has always operated efficiently. We've always said that we've been fiscally responsible. We have shown the public what we do with the money, how we spend the money, and now they basically, in a sense, become shareholders or investors into the system, similar to our bondholders.
That is not needed for everything that MDX has planned on the construction program, operations, maintenance, replacement, and renewal, and coverage would go back to the toll customer, which we're calling stakeholders. They've always been stakeholders. Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question, Maria, is, and forgive me, I wasn't here last week. What does that do to the current Advantage program?
Essentially, this becomes a new Advantage program. Customers who register, basically, the criteria is the same. The only difference in it is that you don't have to ride the roadway 66 times during a particular quarter. If you spend $100 or more during the year, you're a SunPass customer in good standing, you're an individual or you're a business, you can participate in the program. So everybody gets the benefit. So it does expand the program. So as far as the Advantage program, I believe he has the rewards program with the various discounts and things of that nature that will still stay in place, but this will replace the customer rewards program, which we think is more financially advantageous to the customer.
And when does it take effect? Because we have a whole bunch of people that just signed up for the last one.
Well, in the program that we advertised, the Customer Advantage program, within the terms and conditions, we did basically say that we can change the criteria of the program at any point in time. And that's essentially what we're doing right now. So the first check that will go out in mid-December, so the people who did register will actually benefit ahead of time because we never anticipated fiscal year 15 to actually have a customer discount or Advantage program financial discount back to the customer until next year. But we're actually accelerating because we're going to actually do it in fiscal 15. So once we close the books, September, October, we'll come back to Budget and Finance. They'll declare the dividends, and we'll mail checks out in mid-December or whatever point in time the board thinks it's appropriate.
And the dividends are the same for everybody across the board, or there's like a sliding scale?
No, ma'am. If you spend $300 and the governing board just says, well, we're going to, whatever the dividend amount is, and we're going to allocate 10 or 20%, if you spend $300 during that year, you'll get $60 back. So it may be 20%. Someone who spends $400 will get more. It's 20% of 400 will be $80.
So there's a formula.
Right.
Okay.
The only difference is it doesn't matter how many times you ride the road. You must have spent $100 during the year, which is about $2 a week, essentially. So as long as you register, you're a SunPass customer in good standing, and you're an individual and a business, then you can participate in the program.
So this is much more equitable.
It's much more equitable. I think it's easier to understand, and I think it's more financially advantageous to the customer.
Thank you, Marie.
Board Member Fano, like I said the other day, I think what it does is that we've always said we're local. We've always said the money stays here. We've always said we're transparent and efficient. Let's get the customer to hope that we are doing that. So when we waste money, when we're not efficient, when we don't clear an accident, when we don't have the roadway moving, and our performance, well, no, they should have as much a say as the financial markets would, and we should respond to them. We're developing a relationship with them, no different than we would develop the relationship we have with the banking industry, the financial industry. And you know what? It does elevate the expectations, and that's fine, and that's perfect. That's the relationship we prefer.
So the more efficient MDX is, the more money that can actually go back to the stakeholders.
And I'd like to say something, because there was a comment that was made the other day. How many unique SunPass customers do we have in Miami-Dade County? 300,000-400,000. I'm not sure what the number is. I hope there is a day that every single SunPass customer signs up for the program, and that year when we declare dividends, the only thing we can give back is 2 or 3%. It isn't about the money. It's about the relationship that was developed between the customer and the agency, that it's a well-run, efficient operation, that the money's not being wasted. It's not, government getting fat and happy and misspending it. So hopefully there's one day that every single customer signs up for it because they want to see the agency perform well. Because to me, the value of the expressway is the time savings, getting from point A to point B in an efficient, reliable, predictable time. That's, at the end of the day, that is why a toll agency exists.
Ms. Weinberg.
You both touched on efficiency, and I guess that kind of starts to answer my question. I had a question and a concern, and the concern will, I guess, bake a question. We mentioned good standing for SunPass, and I wanted us to identify exactly what that would mean, given some of the glitches that happen with our invoicing, et cetera. Like, I consider myself a good standing customer, but perhaps SunPass doesn't, or MDX doesn't, because of whatever billing issues I've had in the past.
I'm going to let Steve answer that question because he's the toll operation guy.
Hold on, Steve. I'm going to tell you about good standing.
Yeah.
I think the key to this is going to be the business rules that governs this particular policy. It absolutely has to be defined to the T.
Yes.
Because what he may consider good standing, we as policyholders need to take a good close look at what good standing really means. And we'll be aligned. We will be aligned. But we need to take a close look at that to make sure that we are also pleased and aligned with the toll collectors and we, the policyholders, okay? Because, you're going to be very strict, and we live in the real world. I'm not saying you don't, but we live in the real world, so we need to align that. So the business rules have to be addressed, have to be aligned, have to be vetted, and that's why, even though the concept, we're going to move it forward, we're moving it forward, it got the vote, we're going to come back and we're going to look at every fine print to make sure that it exists in the real world and it could live the test of time onward and forward, and that it doesn't meet resistance in the future of someone that wants to stop MDX from giving back to its stakeholders. So now I let you speak.
The way I would see it would be, Madam Chair, if SunPass terminates your account, you're not in good standing.
That's easy. All right.
And that's pretty much what we've done.
Okay.
So that's how it's rated, as if your account's terminated, then you're not in good standing.
Okay. That's simple enough. But we seem to be on the same page, Madam Chair, because my concern then, second to my question, is the messaging and how we're going to communicate this to the public, because I certainly want us, nobody on this board, I think, would want us to end up in an argument with those who seek to destroy us, that if we're giving money back, then we're probably charging too much to begin with, right? So I want us to be and you did a good job at phrasing it, but I'm all for a animated video that really dummies down exactly how incredibly efficient this agency is run and operated before we end up shooting ourselves in the foot trying to do something good for our stakeholders and being viewed as the devil again.
When we built the financing plan, we built it based upon what the construction costs were at that point in time, what we thought our projection operating expenses were. Like any financial projection, things change. And what we have found actually in fiscal 15, there's been some comments out there, people were avoiding the roadway. Actually, our traffic is up. So revenue is higher than what we projected. Our expenses, there were certain things that we didn't do, some things we consolidated, so our operating expenses are down. So what that means, our net revenue is actually higher than we projected. So we have a financial plan that X amount goes into construction, X amount goes into the reserves, and X amount may go for other strategic planning. But the governing board at that point can say, well, the system performed better, we ran the organization very efficiently, we're heavily, we have consultants that we basically task on certain duties, and we may not exercise those tasks in those particular years. So we have a way to manage our expenses. So in that case, it's like any private company, you declare a dividend. So it's not a matter of did we overcharge, it's a matter that did we run the organization well? Okay. Did the system perform financially well? And I know, we've had a lot of discussion about financial performance, but a lot of that goes into the governance and some of the policies that the governing board has put in place, and that affects the financial performance. So I think good governance is also a part of this.
Great. And I think that simple explanation made simpler is how we're going to phrase this. Our efficiency is your savings. Something to that effect, big and global and all over our website, et cetera, to define the program, because it's coming. So we need to be very careful how we advertise the program. But I think we've come up with some great ideas. I'm very pleased to see the presentation. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Is it safe to assume that the recent bond upgrade lends itself to ensuring that there'll be an allocation at the end of the year under this program?
Right now, as we see it, I think the ridership, the usership is up. So, yes.
Well, but the information that the bond rating went up, I think that was very good news. I was out of town, but did anything appear in the Miami Herald about that?
We haven't seen it yet.
I'd like to see a linkage between this program and the bond upgrading and get the message out that way.
Yeah, it was released.
It was released. It brings up a topic that we'll talk in the next committee. But there's other media outlets other than the Herald, and we've been communicating with others, and we will be getting that word out. We're meeting resistance with the Miami Herald, and it's just the way it is.
But I think it's important to link that action with this program so that people see the connection between how well this organization is run.
Very good point. In media buying, we call it buy around. Okay? If you can't make the deal or strike the deal with the media, you just buy around because no one holds that readership or listenership. Thank you. Alfredo.
Marie, I have a question. Will the people that are in the program now automatically become members of this new concept? Do they have to apply, anything like that? No.
Yeah, this is more simple. It's not a matter of 66% of the time. Oh, do I get something back? Listen, MDX is efficient. There's money coming back. You know what this answers to me? This is why I was elated when I first saw it. It answered the question that I posed to staff. If there is excess money, what are we going to do with it? It should go back to the people that are paying into the system, because we committed to do this program and we need to maintain the system safe and we need to maintain the system and operate it. So what are we going to do if there is an excess? What are we going to do? It needs to go back. It should not be spent in, what is it that they call it in Tallahassee? They call it something. There's a thing that they attach to bills. Turkeys. You know what? It can't be spent on turkeys. It's got to be spent properly because we are efficient, we are transparent, and we are accountable. And we're not going to change because there's a background noise. We're not going to do things differently. So for me, that's what it answered. So I congratulate our CFO, Marie. I congratulate our director, and everybody else that worked with you to develop this plan, because it answered. We are not going to spend the money on wasteful. We committed to do a program. We're going to do that program. And if the money is not needed because the ridership is up, more people are using the system, then we're going to give it back to you. And that's period.
Madam Chair, I think in addition to that, the Miami-Dade community is used to the half-cent syndrome. And that is, you sold us on this, we voted for it, and you didn't do what you said you were going to do. You didn't buy the new buses, you didn't do this, you didn't do that, and you used it to cover your operating expenses. In Tallahassee, they also call that switch and bait, or bait and switch. So bait and switch is when you say, this is what I'm going to do, and then after you get an approval on it, you use it for another purpose. So what in effect what this does is it says, we made a calculation that we're doing better, we're more efficient, there's money left over, we're not going to use that money for something else, we're not going to snooker you and use that money for something that you didn't know, that we didn't talk about when we voted for this. So this money belongs to the toll payers, and this is a way of compensating them. So it's a way, perhaps not of reducing to what people want in the reduction in tolls, but it is a way of showing, look, we're playing this straight. We're straight players. We're not snookering you. We're not using this for something else. This money that we have made through efficiency is now going back to you, the toll payer.
Absolutely. And I would be remiss if I don't say, I also have to thank the treasurer, because you're up on this, very important, those business rules that need to now govern this particular policy. It's going to be vital, because you've already heard our concerns, you already heard what we want, and this is not a bait and switch. This is, again, to be accountable, transparent, and efficient. And so...
Well, thank you, Madam Chair, and I do invite board members, when we have this meeting, to really dig deep into the specifics of it. I think this is a very critical, that policy that we're going to be developing, I think, is critical to ensure that we've covered all these bases. You know, that the fine print of this policy of implementing this dividend programs can withhold any scrutiny from the outside. So, and at the same time, we'll have a permanence that will establish, a program here that is not reactionary, but truly a long-standing program that cannot just be changed willy-nilly or with the winds. This is really a commitment to our commuters that if we're efficient, we're successful, there will be a partnership that will pay dividends, literally.
Thank you very much. And with that, I'm going to say, unless there's other comments from staff or any board member, I'm going to say again, thank you very much for sharing your time, for volunteering extra time out of your busy schedule to participate in MDX initiatives. We are grateful for your time and energy and wisdom and professionalism. With that, we conclude this section and the business at hand with this committee. And because of the will of the comments of the board members, we'll leave it open so every year there is a think big that we get together and, we knock it out of the ballpark. Again, thank you very much. Is there a motion to adjourn? Very good. We stand adjourned. Thank you.